to talk about one's relation to the constellations and gods. Now, what specific constellations? I'm talking about the zodiac constellations. Now, there are understandings of the zodiac in the Hindu understanding. There is the Greek and the Roman. Roman is very similar to Greek. And then there is the Sumerian understanding of the constellations, the Egyptian. But I'll give some examples of Virgo, Cancer, Scorpio, Taurus, and all the other constellations that we know and love today in Western society. They, depending on when we're born, we fall under these constellations, and then they are indeed a factor in how we end up in this lifetime, what our preferences are, what our nature is. But I would like to say that the soul, based on what it can purchase in an incarnation, falls under the sign, not because of the sign, but because of the soul's preference at that time, the soul's nature at that time, what the soul needs to learn in that lifetime. That's why we are born under certain constellations, not because necessarily the constellation is in the sky, but because we have a certain nature that needs to be worked out, and we are born at these times so that there can be an understanding of what we have to work on and what our nature is at that time. We can try and understand these constellations, the signs we're born under, and realize what our soul is trying to tell us, what our soul is trying, our subconscious even, our subconscious being very close to the soul, is trying to tell us our consciousness. And this is all to the goal of progressing spiritually along the cycles of many incarnations, through reincarnation, until we reach complete union with the source, with God. Now, I'd also like to say that the gods are kind of on a similar conveyor belt around us. Now, the gods are far more developed souls. They are souls that have worked their way up to the station of true godhood. And it's not necessarily the left-hand path understanding, as far as I'm concerned, that we make ourselves God here and now by gaining power, by gaining a certain understanding just for ourselves, and then we make ourselves a living God. I don't believe in that. What I believe in is, and this is just a belief, take it for what it's worth, is that once we relinquish our ego to a certain extent and we work towards unity to a certain extent, then that's when we gain a certain level of godhood. Now, godhood is something that is a station. It's a station in the cosmos. We have to not necessarily satisfy, but we have to meet a certain demand by all the souls below us, by whatever domain we cover. So if, for instance, the Divine Mother Kali Ma, the form of God that I worship the source through, she is the mother who tries to get her children to do the right things. She's kind of harsh sometimes, but she tries to show us the limitations of time, how to conquer time, how to see that our body is an illusion and that unity is the ultimate reality, and tries to allow us to have fulfillment in this life, but also work towards that ultimate unity with the spirit beyond creation that is everyone's ultimate goal. Now, with Kali Ma, that is a station that a certain soul worked up to, just like every other god, in my opinion. But Kali Ma is very close to the spirit beyond creation, the original source. So there are different levels of God, I guess you could say. I wouldn't consider Kali Ma a demigod. I consider her more of a major aspect god, just like Vishnu, Shiv. But a lot of the demigods that serve certain functions, and Kali Ma is not one of them. We could say Skanda is a demigod, for instance, the god of war and wisdom and justice. Or I would consider Ganesh a demigod. These are Hindu gods. Ganesh, the god of wisdom and compassion and writing and truth. Demigods that we're souls that raise themselves up to that station by becoming closer to God in a certain way, so that they would have a certain domain over people that would appeal to them, and then once those aspects of God are appealed to, then those gods help them. This is kind of what gods do. And these demigods are kind of on a conveyor belt around us. these influences of God, these aspects of God, travel through, well, not necessarily themselves, but their relation to us travels through time and space around us, around every single one of our souls. And it's not necessarily physical, but it's ideological. It's as far as aspect, as far as what we need to know. These aspects travel through our plane of vision, our plane of astral vision, our plane of spiritual vision. And whatever we need to learn at the time travels before us along this conveyor belt of gods, if you will. And the ones that we see, the ones that draw close to us and we draw close to them just automatically, are the ones that we have to try and work towards, because those are the aspects that we need to try and deal with in relation to God. Because anything that comes before us, any aspect of God that comes before us, of this grand conveyor belt, you can say, like the constellations, but more in relation to every single soul and one's kind of soul perspective, I guess you could say, is something that we need to hash out for ourselves. It's something that we need to deal with ourselves and try and realize why the universe of gods is trying to send us this message through this aspect of God. And it's not like the gods are circling around one person necessarily, but what comes into our spiritual plane of view is what we need to focus on. And this is a very constant purpose of God's, to display themselves before those who need their message, and the message that they need to learn in order to progress in their own soul's development, our own soul's development. The individuals on Earth, the human beings, is who I'm talking about mainly. Though it's true throughout the multiverse and especially throughout this universe. But this conveyor belt of gods that goes before our spiritual vision, we should always take into account. The constellation we're born under, no matter what zodiac sign it is, we should take into account. What gods we're drawn to, we should take into account. What gods seem to call to us or seem to show themselves in our daily lives, in what kind of aspects seem to pop up again and again, even in the form of problems. We should take those into account, and just be always observant spiritually as to what comes up in our material life, but also what comes up in our mind, which is the second deeper level, and then another deeper level that people can easily experience is what our subconscious vaults forward. That spiritual sense, that spiritual view, what our subconscious shows us in dreams, what it shows. Dreams are the lesser aspect, but what our subconscious shows us in what we constantly return to in waking thought, in our consciousness, and what the problems that we feel plague us, but are actually trying to teach us something. That's what our subconscious is trying to tell us. It's the subconscious viewing that conveyor belt of gods, of those aspects that are coming particularly before people, certain people, because they tap into that need, and they tap into that God that can satisfy that need. And if we remain aware of the aspects that are coming before us, especially if we feel like we have a certain spiritual sight, even during consciousness, not just in dreams. Dreams are a more minor aspect, but in waking consciousness, if we feel that there are certain problems and solutions that are prevalent, then we should take note. For instance, if overall I'm being drawn to Ganesh, but I don't know it, I might see in my everyday life the need to write out truth. Maybe I'm making a court statement that is very particular to me telling the truth, but there's also the aspect of, is it wise to paint it in this light or that light? And another example of being drawn to Ganesh might be, is my wisdom coherent with my actions? Am I practicing my wisdom? And if this pops up again and again, and maybe there's some symbolism that is associated with Ganesh that you see a lot too in either your dreams or your waking life that kind of pops out at you, you might be drawn to Ganesh. If you have a very big intellect but can't quite balance it in your understanding of things, if you're very Christian, for instance, and this this intellect of yours is constantly questioning Christianity and can't quite balance on Christianity because the kind of church you're a part of does not accept intellectual understanding, then you might be drawn to something like Ganesh. Maybe not Ganesh, but Ganesh is one of the gods you might be drawn to. But these are just small examples in a vast array of examples that can happen to you. But to wrap things up, always be aware of the constellations that you were born under and the gods that you were drawn to along the conveyor belt of your spiritual sight. Because really, we're more on a conveyor belt than the gods, but it can be compared either way. We are drawn to certain problems and solutions. We have certain problems because we're drawn to them, and then there are certain solutions that are presented to us. And those make all the difference in our spiritual development, so stay aware. But thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up down there. If this was something that you want to comment on, feel free to shoot it down there in the comment section below, whether you agree or disagree or have a question. But may you all find what you were looking for.